Hey there, AJ. Hope you're doing great. Just going to make a quick video to offer you some feedback of your latest AP practice essay. This was the 2005 prose prompt over McTeague, the unsanitary dentist who had hopes of becoming the biggest dentist in the land, but was unfortunately probably not going to be able to succeed on that because he didn't seem to understand the basics about how to run a dentist parlor. The prompt asked you to talk about uh, how the how McTeague is characterized through diction, syntax, detail, and I believe tone. And it asked you to comment specifically about how those are reflected in the narrator's attitude towards McTeague. So it asked you to do a lot. It was a fairly challenging prompt. Let's talk about how you did. But before we do that, since this is the first video, I'll give you a quick run through of how these work. I try to talk as quickly as possible. I try to make the videos as short as possible. I'm not always successful on that. But if I gloss over something too quickly and I don't explain enough in depth, and you need additional clarification about what I mean, just come see me in class. I will be more than happy to go over it with you, either when we're talking about these in class, or if you're free during my planning, which is fourth block, you can come talk to me about the essay then. But if I gloss over things too quickly, just ask me in person, and I'll be more than happy to go over it with you. Okay, I start the videos by talking about what the essay does well. Then I move on to things that we might want to tweak, or things that I see going on that you might want to address in your writing in order to help you become a stronger writer. And then finally, I give you a score on that 1 to 9 scale we've been using, and I talk about why I scored it the way that I did, so that you can have a better understanding of what the AP committee is looking for when you take this exam in May. Okay, so let's get started. We'll start with the things that I feel like you do well. You do a great job of focusing on the literary devices here that they give you. So you talk about tone, diction, and detail. And you do a good job of explaining how McTeague is characterized as someone who is determined in becoming a lifelong dentist. And you make this interesting claim that he's characterized as hyper-masculine, which seems to contrast with his desire to be a dentist. But you do a good job of talking about how McTeague is characterized, and I feel like the essay is well organized around the literary devices. So you have one paragraph about selection of detail, you have another about diction, and you have a final one about what was the last one? Tone. And I felt like that was a clever way to organize it. I feel like that's the way to go about it. Your writing flows nicely in between your individual paragraphs, mostly thanks to your incorporation of transitions. Those are small things, but man, are they important. So good job making sure that you have transitions between your paragraphs to help your writing flow much more smoothly. And yeah, you have some excellent quotes in here that back up your claims. The quote of the young giant, right? You have the quote about how he extracted a refractory tooth with his thumb and finger to demonstrate his masculinity. I feel like the quotes were relevant to the points that you were making, and I feel like they were. I feel like they were good quotes to select for your point. A lot of people think that you can just quote bomb, you can just drop quotes in anywhere and they'll work. That's not the case. It is important to select good quotes, and I feel like the essay did that quite well. So yeah, those are all excellent things. I didn't notice any spelling errors. Your capitalization is on point. A lot of people struggle with that for some reason. And yeah, you did a great job of spelling McTeague's name. A lot of people struggle with that. That one's a little more understandable. I would assume that's an Irish name. Okay, keep up all those great things. Let's talk now about areas where the essay could probably be strengthened a little bit. You'll notice the numbers that I've got listed here. By the time you see this video, you should have the handout that explains what they mean. They're just grammar errors. You don't have any. You only have one that I see popping up multiple times, so I'm going to go over that one real quick. And it's 18, which is passive voice. Passive voice is when you have your sentence is backwards. So an active voice sentence, which is the opposite of passive voice, would be he kicked the ball. Passive voice would flip that around and say the ball was kicked by him. Passive voice isn't it's not a it's not grammatically incorrect. The problem with passive voice is that if you have enough sentences like it in your essay, your your essay becomes a lot wordier than it needs to be because it takes more words to say the same thing in passive voice than it does in active voice. And so there are areas in here where your writing is clunky or it's worded and it feels like you could trim some of the fat off of your sentences and your sentences would be much better for it. Another example here I've just highlighted there. McTeague is seen as determined in becoming a lifelong dentist. That's another passive voice sentence. And again, you can just cut this phrasing out. McTeague is determined in becoming a lifelong dentist. And the sentence doesn't lose anything, right? So if you can cut away like that, your writing actually becomes clearer and more coherent. A lot of people think that the key to writing well is to sound as fancy as possible, so they expand their sentences, right? They want to make their sentences as big as possible. And this is actually a common misunderstanding. You don't want your sentences to be as long as possible. You want them to be as clear as possible, and that's not always the same thing. That's not to say you can't write a clear, long sentence, but generally speaking, longer sentences tend to be less coherent than crisp sentences, right? So be on the lookout for that. Writers your age often struggle with this. I mean, I'd say 90% of my writers have struggled with this since I've been here over the last 7 years. So no big deal. Just make sure you're watching out for those. Other things, you have instances where you have use informal words or the writing is clunky, right? This sentence, for example, the reader can infer that he isn't somebody whose intelligence is taken to advantage. That is not how we'd word it. I think it would be he isn't someone whose intelligence is taken advantage of. And then you have another sentence here. His skill is taken to a profession that doesn't fit his character. That word there, taken, seems to be the wrong verb. His skill is I'm not even sure how to make that work. It's so awkwardly worded that you're trying to say his skills and his character don't fit his profession. That's what you're trying to say in that sentence, which just actually seems to be the inverted of what you're actually saying. You're saying that his profession, his skill is in a profession that doesn't fit his character. Again, like it's awkward wording, and it's one of those where I just need you to trust me on it. It's just not the natural way to say that, and it's said in a way that will confuse most readers. Which of course is problematic. You don't want your reader to have to struggle to understand you. You want them to understand you kind of without even having to think about it. I mean, that's what great writing is. Writing is Great writing is writing that is so powerful and so intuitive and so coherent that the meaning just is obvious. It just emerges out of the language itself. You don't have to think about it. It's just like, yeah, that's the way it is. So that's what we're striving for. Obviously, that level of writing takes a lot of practice to get to. So, but just watch out for those. There was enough in there for me. If you combine those with the grammar errors and the informality errors, there was enough in there for me to sort of put this as a 3. The I'm not sure what the line is. I don't know if it's 2 comma errors or 3 comma errors or what have you. But there is a line where if you have enough grammar errors going on and there's enough awkward wording going on, the essay will not score above a 3. They just say that that's one of the few explicit guidelines given. If there's too many grammar errors, it will not be scored above a 3. And that's all I feel that's keeping this from a 5, quite frankly, are the grammar errors. So if you can address those and tweak those, I feel like you're going to jump 2 points pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, this is about where I expect most people to score. I expect most people to score in the 3 to 4 range on their first go at this. So don't panic about this. You're in a good spot. We just need to focus on tweaking the language to be as clear as possible. And that takes practice and it takes paying attention and it actually takes slowing down a bit. and trying to think of the clearest way to say something. Again, you're going to have plenty of time to practice this. You'll have time to practice it as you revise it. I will ask that you revise this before you receive credit. Everyone's going to have to revise their essays, so I'm not picking on you. But do, as you revise it, focus on these things I've highlighted. If you have questions, if you need help as you revise, just come find me, and I'll be more than happy to go over it with you. But yeah, I've rambled on long enough for this video. Great work. And yeah, I will see you in class very soon.